Good afternoon to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here. Wednesday, the 23rd of August, 2023. I'm in San Antonio after quite an interesting few days from Southern California to Southeast Texas and the Corpus Christi area yesterday. Yeah, it is tropical shenanigans. It is crazy what's been going on. The stuff in Southern California, we're finally seeing a lot more coming out of there about how impactful it was. Luckily, I have not heard, because I haven't been exactly dialed in, about any loss of life. Hopefully that is zero. We certainly haven't seen anything of any high numbers. Hopefully it is zero. But the damage and the impact certainly there. And then, of course, we had Harold coming in yesterday to South Texas. And then just the rest of everything else going on in the tropics. The models, inconsistent in what they show from run to run. You know, what's happening with the El Nino versus the Atlantic. It's like tropical shenanigans out there, and I want to try to make some sense of it. I don't have all the answers, but we can at least look at it together and see what's happening. First, let's take a look at the scorecard over here from the Colorado State University Northern Hemisphere Tropical Cyclone Activity, and I'll just write in here, so to speak, scorecard. That's what I would put. Phil Klotzbach and his team update this and created this web page. The North Atlantic had 9 storms so far this year. 8 have had a name. 1 was an unnamed subtropical storm way back in January. And then let's look all the way over here to the ACE score. 19.8 for the accumulated cyclone energy. Normally we were at, would be at 22.3 today, so a little bit behind the normal curve, so to speak, for this time of year. Again, just kind of starting off, where are we in things? That's what I wanted to do. And then in the sea surface temperature anomalies map department, yeah, there's the El Nino. Really, really strong anomalies there in the eastern Pacific. This El Nino is going to be very short-lived, by the way. We'll talk about that more on Monday when we have a broader discussion about things. But, yep, everything is basically still there. There's the very warm Atlantic overall. Nothing has changed with that. The Gulf of Mexico is still quite a bit warmer than I have ever seen it. Huge area of 31 Celsius covering a big percentage of the Gulf of Mexico, upper 80s. We are very lucky that Harold did not get its act together, let's say even in the Central Gulf, over here somewhere, developing a core and then coming on over towards Baffin Bay. That would have been a true disaster. It really would. And I'm going to tell you just real quick a little piece of commentary. Being in Corpus Christi yesterday on the north side of it, where it made landfall, I couldn't get to. You know, down parts of Padre Island, that's all like National Seashore or whatever, no roads down there. And so I stayed up in Corpus, and those bands that came through, this was an intensifying tropical storm, and it was really fascinating to see how that punch really did come in. And I mean, come on, I've been in enough of these to know, no, it wasn't a really big deal. No, it was not hurricane conditions out there, but I never said it was. What was interesting, and I talk about this a lot, is the difference between an intensifying system and one that is unraveling, where the convection is coming down, versus Harold, where the convective activity and the organization was coming together all the way to landfall. Michael did that in 2018 in Mexico Beach area. We caught that on one of our cameras, and it was jaw-dropping, right? Yesterday was not jaw-dropping, but it really showed me once again that, look, these intensifying systems really bring the rainfall down much more efficiently, and it did. It dumped buckets down there. Luckily, Harold was moving quickly. I saw a car accident right in front of me. Our vehicle cam caught it. I'm not going to share it on social media. I just, I did have it on Fox Weather yesterday to kind of talk about a point about driving carefully, but putting it on social media where it can be shared and whatever, there's just no need to do that. But I saw it, and I was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Impacts, impacts, impacts. And so for the person that wrecked their car into the Jersey wall right in front of my eyes, they were okay. They just damaged their car. Harold was a big deal for them. They were going too fast for the conditions, yes, but it just proves my point that impacts are what matters, not these labels that we give these things. And Harold boy, I tell you, we are very lucky that it didn't get going sooner. Seriously. Elsewhere along the Atlantic seaboard, still nice and warm, water temperature wise, nothing to come along to disturb it. And I'm glad that it's still toasty because I want to go down to the beach this weekend with the kids in the late afternoon and just kind of relax. I definitely need to do that. Been traveling too much. So what else do we have going on out there? Well, there's the leftovers of Harold in West Texas, bringing some much needed rain that way. Another real quick anecdote for you. Driving from Corpus back up to San Antonio, most of the area was damp to wet. And that was great because when I drove down the day before, once I got in Monday evening, it was all dry and there were grass fires, a couple of them. So again, there are benefits to these things, but we still have to understand that there are impacts that can be negative as well. And, Harold was a close call. It really was. I look at it as a shot across the bow, that old metaphor there of what could happen, right? So anyway, Harold's moving along. That's good. Here's Franklin. Franklin's going to be a problem. It is a problem. Tremendous heavy rains for parts of Hispaniola as a whole. And then we've got these other features out here, the leftovers of Emily. And then we have another system out here, 92L. Probably won't amount to much. But, yes, we'll talk about the shenanigans a little bit. Remember there was that one run of the GFS that it brought this all the way over and then did something like really scary over here? That's what I'm talking about. Everything is just like there's no consistency. All right, let's take a look at satellite real quick. There we have the leftovers of Harold. All of this moisture going to make its way up into the desert southwest over here. More rain, more moisture, more replenishing of watersheds, more flash flooding, more amazing pictures from some of the chasers and people that live out there. What an interesting world it is in the southwest U.S. when moisture gets involved. It really is. Then we have Franklin down here, the leftovers of Emily, which may make a comeback. And then we've got this big old ridge of high pressure still sitting over the nation's midsection, kind of a trough deal. That's why probably Franklin will not affect the United States directly, but we don't know that for sure. We'll talk about that shortly. Wider shot, moving on to the east. There's Franklin there. Again, there's Harold over here. There's Emily, 92L. And then there's plenty of stuff over Africa still looking to come offshore later on. And we do have some interesting energy down here in the eastern Pacific, which will come into play once we get into the true sort of introduction to why I called this update Tropical Shenanigans. I want to point this out. Michael Fisher works down in Miami, just to show you who this is, atmospheric scientist. Really important tweet here. It's pretty wild to me how often the island of Hispaniola is hit by tropical cyclones. Franklin adding to this list of long list of storms. I don't like to see the convective bands building on the south side of the system, as those can cause significant flooding. These bands right here that come in, that's towards the Dominican Republic. Haiti is over here. Boy, he's right. That island really takes the brunt of a lot of these cyclones. Very heavy rain. Talk about orographic lift. This could be a pretty big disaster down there, and a lot of people like to vacation, especially on the eastern side of the Dominican Republic over here. So if you're down there, people down there, and you got some video or experiences you want to share, let me know. Tag me on social media there, Twitter, or on the YouTube comments. I'd like to know, because that's an impactful situation down there. Vorticity-wise, kind of interesting here, all our different players. There's Franklin, vorticity kind of stretched out a little bit. I believe this is going to strengthen significantly in the southwest Atlantic and be our next hurricane. I think it's, I don't think the shenanigans are a factor in this one. I think it's going to happen. But look at all this other energy out here. There's lots of it. That's what I'm talking about. Now this is vorticity that's stretched out across our fronts. There's Harold. There's stuff down here, stuff in the East Pack. It's shenanigans. It is. It's like a miscellaneous circus of just what the heck. Like, there's nothing to really hone in on, and therefore it makes forecasting very difficult. And to that point, I wanted to talk about this over from our friends at Storm 2K. A lot of people are watching this stuff with great interest for various reasons, of course. And it has been a really interesting season. A lot of people anticipating a very busy season because of the record warm Atlantic, but then there's that El Nino that was maybe going to counter it. And we look at the long range models and they're showing different things, and it's just like, the old expression, a watched pot never boils. We look at this stuff under a microscope all the time, and it does kind of get a little bit maddening because we just want to make sense of it at the end of the day. We're not hoping for hurricanes that are going to come in and ruin lives, but it's just an interesting thing to watch. And so watching it too closely all the time, maybe it becomes a little bit unhealthy because it does. It starts to mess with you. And here's a great example. This is Adrian here. I know because I just know. And I like this post here over at Storm 2 Cases, just saying it's really something to see. The models show an MDR hurricane, that's main development region, and the next run, it's gone. And then he goes on to say, glad he didn't renew a membership for a certain website there. He's just like, I don't know. There's zero consistency this year with anything. And that is true. It has been a very tough year to figure out. And it's not just the tropics. The severe weather season was very lackluster in April and May, but then June, July, and into the first part of August, a whole bunch of tornadoes, lots of pictures, lots of massive hail, right? Not in the traditional part of the season. Colorado has been very wet. The desert Southwest had Hillary. It's just crazy shenanigans, right? That's what it is. And then just a whole bunch of different people chiming in. And I think that it's really interesting here about how the models are showing stuff. People are trying to figure it out, and other people are noticing. And I just thought I'd bring that up over at Storm 2K there. All right. So speaking of these models, let's first look at the GFS here. I'm going to refresh it because it's rendered out all the way to 8 days, so that's good. So what do we got? Well, let's take a look here. Let's use blue to highlight stuff. There's Franklin. Let's watch what happens with that. And everything else is pretty much out here in the open Atlantic. It's going to stay out there. We have a lack of deep ridging all across the Atlantic. That's not there. So we're going to watch this guy right here, and that would be Franklin. So let's see what happens over the next few days. Crosses over Hispaniola, organizes near the Turks and Caicos, and really starts to take off there by about day 3. Just sort of meandering down there as the old pressure pattern of the North Atlantic realigns itself. Lots of different changes going on. And then it cuts up, and by the way, that is Bermuda right there at the end of the arrowhead. That's Bermuda. So Bermuda could be affected a little bit here. We got to watch this. And that's a hurricane in the model. I mean, it is. And we're going to get some swells that are going to come out from this towards the East Coast and elsewhere. So surfers, get ready. I think that's coming. But this is interesting too, this little feature here. What's that going to do? It's like there's so much going on. I would think that would erode the ridge a little bit, and I'm a little bit more concerned about Bermuda because of that. But what if this feature is not there? Then the ridge is a little stronger, and Franklin's a little bit more west, and then those swells are a little bit higher. You see what I mean? There's just lots of different outcomes here. We're beyond day 5. There's day 6, and then finally day 7. This heads on out into the North Atlantic, innocuously, is that a word? I think so, missing land areas after affecting, of course, our friends down here in Hispaniola. So you see what happens there. It comes up, kind of dances around Bermuda, and then takes off, and we're well out past a week at that point in time. All right, but also notice, let's just look out here right at day 6, let's say, this feature right down here. Remember, the other day, just a few days ago, I think Friday when I left for California, the GFS and other models were showing exactly that. Just a little disturbance in the 850 millibar area. I showed it on plenty of updates in the past, several days before I left, whatever, and that's what eventually became Harold. All right, now remember that, okay? There is a little disturbance down there on the GFS on this run. Very important. So let's move over to another tweet real quick regarding Franklin, because this is important. He's responding to a tweet here and a whole thread of stuff to himself, of course, but he's talking about you got this anticyclone over the top of it, high pressure aloft, and these dual outflow channels. Boy, I'm glad that Andrew here, I called him Andy, so I think I did, whatever. Andrew has highlighted these with these annotation arrows. There's your outflow channels. The overall pressure pattern in the upper levels is favorable. Yes, it looks like Franklin should strengthen significantly as it moves away from Hispaniola. Sorry, the next few days is getting to me. And so I do think that's going to become a solid hurricane in the southwest Atlantic. Bermuda definitely wants to watch this closely, but the swells for the east coast of the United States could be a really big problem because those are impacts, even if indirectly. Something we will watch in the coming days. Now, this is the main point about the old shenanigans. This is the ECMWF, regarded as the king, right? They call it King Euro often. It's a global model, all right? That's what it is. And this is the run from a couple of nights ago. It was 0Z on the 22nd, so the night of the 21st into the 22nd. I want you to keep your eye on this area. This is what the Euro was showing at that time. Energy came out of the southeastern Pacific, almost looks like a gyre down there. It consolidated that energy. When it did it at around 90 hours down in the Gulf of Honduras down there. Brings it in over the Yucatan at almost day 5 and dumps a lot of rain on the Yucatan. You see Franklin over there on the other side. And then it pops it out into the Gulf, and it made landfall near Mexico Beach roughly 10 days later. The 10-day part, yeah, of course we say, come on. But what about just right here, 93 hours out? And then you go and see what it looked like at the next run, 12Z on the 22nd, if I can find it right there, and nothing. It's not there. It's way different. You know, it still has that piece of energy come out of the Pacific. It dies over Honduras, Nicaragua, really, never consolidates, and there's Franklin doing its thing. And then you say, well, what about 0Z last night into today, right? Well, maybe it came back. Nope, still just kind of not much going on. So the consistency is just weird. It is. And I don't know what to make of it. Like, remember Harold was not looking like much in the models, and it came in and it almost ramped up. Again, if it had another day or two, it would have been a major disaster. So we have to watch this area. We do. Because the models are inconsistent, and I think it's very easy to understand this. If something were to get going right here and head into the general direction of this area, you only got a couple of days. And those water temperatures are 31 Celsius or higher. You understand? Stuff can happen quickly. We're not seeing it right now, and that doesn't mean it won't happen. Harold is a great example of that. But it also doesn't mean it will happen because Harold happened. One thing doesn't have anything to do with the other necessarily, but I'm wondering if we're seeing a symptom that the models are just struggling with these smaller, more complex features, and then they might start to go, and we only have a couple of days notice. So just something to keep in mind if you are along the eastern Gulf Coast, all right? Just watch things closely over the next several days. That's all it is. Nothing to worry about. Just pay attention. A lot of stuff aiming for your attention every day. Just have an extra eye on the tropics, all right? And then the Canadian, the CMC here, or GEM, whatever you want to call it, this is from last night's run. I don't know why I refreshed it. But look at all the stuff it does. And by the way, it also does a very similar thing with that energy coming out of the Eastern Pacific as the Euro. So that's a little bit of consistency. And that's last night. That's not even 2 nights ago. What about right now, though? Just to kind of show you, to contrast the Canadian with the GFS over here from today. This is what the Canadian shows. There's Franklin over there, and lo and behold, the Canadian still tries to develop something from that Central American mess coming into the area where Ian impacted. And this is about 6 days out. So, yeah, there's a lot to watch, even though there doesn't seem to be a lot to watch. Nothing to worry about. I'm not trying to scare anybody. That's so ridiculous that people say that about anybody unless they really are. I mean, I'm not shouting and screaming and blaring red signals everywhere. Just watch the stuff, because we are in this period of tropical shenanigans. I don't know the answers. The models are guidance, but they're not doing very well right now with consistency. That's all it is. There might not be anything wrong with them. They're trying to figure all this out. We've got the record warm Atlantic, the El Nino. This has not happened before. You bet the models are going to have some issues there. So there you go. Let me get this online for you, all right? Thanks for tuning in. I got to upload this and then check out of the hotel and get moving so I can get back home to North Carolina. You guys have a good one. Again, great to have all the new subscribers to the YouTube channel, several new people on our Patreon site, our Discord server. It's just wonderful. Thank you for your time and your attention and your positive feedback and engagement. It means a lot to me and the team at HurricaneTrack. Speaking of HurricaneTrack, that's us. I'm Mark Sudduth. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.